So I'll now introduce Paul Davenport from Affinity Insurance Brokers. Paul, I guess, is an outdoor educator at heart and has later in life gone into the insurance field. So it'll be interesting to have that dual perspective, and I'm really looking forward to what Paul has to say. And then following his discussion, we'll no doubt open it up for questions. Thanks, Paul.
Well, thank you, Peter. I appreciate very much the introduction, and thanks for the opportunity of being here. It's not often that people are actually excited or looking forward to hearing what I've got to say, so we'll take it as a huge compliment. Look, it's interesting listening to as you're speaking of the balance between the excellent communication, and congratulations to all of you for this type of networking, because it's really, really important, and it has had I think a major influence on the return to activities in each of the various states, and I think it's something we need to capitalise on and keep working on. So good work for what you're doing here. The other part of the introduction, Pete, you introduced it as the post-COVID world. Obviously, you're not in Victoria. We seem to be a long way from post-COVID. A week or so, we were probably really getting excited as to what's going on, and then bang, things changed significantly, and I think people are probably really quite concerned now, and it's a mix of, are people taking it serious enough, or are they taking it too seriously? From an insurance perspective, COVID-19 has come at a very interesting time. There are a number of issues that are facing the adventure, outdoor education sectors in relation to insurance, very similar to what the horse industry overall has been experiencing probably since 2002. And right now, I'd have to say availability of the insurance, of public liability insurance, is about as bad as I've seen it in the 18 years that I've worked in this role. On the other hand, those that are doing things well, and those that have got the appropriate documentation and support and the networks of around them, seem to be being able to get their insurance, and the availability of that insurance, in particular public liability, are doing well. But insurers have become a little wiser. I'm not sure people in the recreation space have become more informed about insurance, but insurance has certainly become more informed about the outdoor recreation space. And so what they're asking for in many cases is the expansion of and detail of risk management documentation and the likes. For many, they're surprised to hear it, but the insurers, whilst they don't really know the answers to the questions they're asking, they know they need to answer them. And the claims history in this space, in particular with certain activities, certainly around ropes, in particular high ropes, zip lines, and the likes, the claims experiences of the insurers have been significantly increasing over the years, to the point now that a number of insurers, I think it's up to 5 in the last 3 years, and then up until recently, another 2 or 3 insurers have completely withdrawn from the market. So we are facing a very interesting time going forwards, and one where I think we need to be very proactive. In relation to COVID-19, I certainly would encourage you to have regular communication with your brokers, making sure that the insurers are aware, and that you can get some evidence of that the insurers are aware of what you do, specifically what you do, and specifically what you're saying, this is what we're doing, can you please confirm it's okay? A lot of insurers have already imposed exclusions in relation to COVID related claims going forwards. So it is, again, insurance is about peace of mind. So making sure you do ask the questions and you get satisfied and satisfying answers, and in writing, to ensure that you've got that. And look, really, for those guys who have had a relationship with their broker and have had regular communications with their insurer, it's business as usual. But for those that are not used to that, the last 6 months and the next 2 years are certainly going to see a change in the way that you communicate.
Thanks very much for that, Paul. Do people have questions around insurance, which Paul could potentially answer, or potentially let's just open up a discussion with asking questions around the insurance subject?
Pete, I've got one. It's Andrew here from Outhaus Vic. Just a quick question. Thanks very much, Paul, for joining us. And hopefully you're going somewhere fun in the outdoors. I've had some chats, and it sounds like some of the concern has been caused by some operators in the motorised vehicle space. So more the adventure activities around potentially even jet skis and quad bikes and the like. And also around, as you say, not providing regular updates at the moment to their insurer or their broker around what kind of activities they're doing, and making sure that the insurer is comfortable with that. Are they sort of two of the examples of businesses in our basic space that have been having some issues?
Andrew, look, yes, definitely. I mean, quad bikes and even jet skis, but quad bikes in particular, for the last 5 years, those have been struggling to get quality insurance or regular insurance, or certainly if they've had a claim, it's been very difficult for them to get anything. So that's probably true, and certainly it's been highlighted in the West Australia media and what's been done there. But I think overall it's across the board. The outdoor recreation and the adventure activities across the board have been significantly underpriced for the claims histories of the industries. And so what's happened is that there's been a push and a push. And so we're going to see either, what's happened is because of the loss ratios, that insurers are either pulling out completely from the market because they're just not going to lose any more money, they've lost enough, or they're expecting much more detailed risk management documentation, and then evidence that that documentation is what people are doing. There's been some significant claims, and I'll go, the activities in particular that are under the microscope at the moment are any roping activities, and in particular zip lines, high ropes courses, and the likes. So, these activities are being either repriced or thrown out. But those who are getting the opportunity to get insurance across the board, just typically in relation to the costs that insurers have incurred, the industry is looking at significant price increases in order to get it. And the difficulty that we've got is a lot of people then say, oh, but we can't afford that, or we're getting priced out of it. This is where, some consistent messaging is that, I think we've in this industry, we've not considered ourselves as professionals for a long time because we're doing what we love. It's often considered as a bit of a hobby industry, so therefore we charge fees that are appropriate for what we can get business at, and so the bar's been set very low. And I think you can see that through COVID. I'd be interested to see how many people were able to maintain their staffing levels through COVID. I know most of my, probably better organised clients have been able to do that. Yet, for a lot of the industry, it seems that there was a huge strain on that. So we've got huge unemployment, waving right the way through. Hence why we're trying to get things kicking back again. So I think it's time to actually reflect as an industry overall, all of these factors, because unfortunately they've all come together at the one time. I don't think COVID has actually done any harm for the industry. In a way, it may have helped, which is a bit of an oracle statement as it is. I don't know if I've completely answered your question, Andrew, but hopefully it's given you some background as to what's happening in and around it.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. There's a number of other questions there, so I don't know whether Pete wanted to address them, because you won't probably be able to read them because you're driving.
Well, I am parked.
Yeah, I was going to just fire them at you, Paul, if that's okay.
Please do.
First question from Dom Courtney of Corf. Do you think the alignment with the Queensland industry plans approved by our Chief Health Officer might help settle the nerve of insurers somewhat for Queensland operators?
Look, let me answer that question again generically across the board. Yes, there's certainly help in that, but then I also look at there's been a sense of security within the industry, and I noticed another one there said, you know, I've been operating for 12 years, I think it is. I can't read them all clearly, but we've had no claims yet. Our insurers pulled out. Unfortunately, yes, there can be some good operators, but it's the overall industry markers that the insurers are looking at. And what's happened in the past is a lot of operators have been looking at different accreditation models, for example. There might be an accreditation, a tourism accreditation model. We meet that. And they've then rested their laurels on that, which has got some good help in relation to business practice, marketing. But when it comes to actually conducting the activities, there's very little substance, and so the insurers have not placed any emphasis on those type of accreditations, and if they have, as soon as a claim comes along, you know, the claims guys are saying to the underwriters, well, why have you taken this on? Because that doesn't address this. We've got no control mechanisms. We've got nothing to measure by. So that's where the pull out is, the disconnect between the claims department and the underwriting department of most insurers. So it is important that industry liaises with insurers and actually gets their message right through. So the answer is yes, but it's very much a qualified yes.
Thanks, Paul. Just another question in the group chat from Ellen Barker, PLC Perth. Can you please let us know which insurers have either withdrawn from outdoor pursuits or have folded?
All right. Well, look, I can name some specifically. I'm not sure that there's things to be benefited by that, because there's also then an understanding of where it sits. So, for example, insurers, Winsure, Hostshore, they've left the market. I think most people probably have heard of those. Then there are some underwriting agencies. So for the likes of Penn Underwriting and One Underwriting, those are underwriting agencies. They have been forced to leave the market because insurers have just not done it. Now, there's a whole list more, but probably just as an example then is that both insurers and insurance agencies have actually pulled out on the market, and typically those are insurers who have come and gone through various syndicates. Syndicates reach their capacity, so and then align those with claims. So there's really not been any who have been long-term advocates within the industry. I know people are surprised when, for example, I've got clients who have been with me and have been with the one insurer for not just the one broker, but the one insurer for now over 15 years. And the loyalty of the insurer to that group of people is actually very strong. And then people go saying, oh, where do you get insurance, or how much are you paying? And they get stuff, and then they say, oh, I'm paying double that. Well, yeah, they've been paying half that for 15 years, where others are wanting to come on in a short period. Insurers are really weighing up those types of things. So the more relationship that you can have with the insurer, certainly going to help you in sustaining those.
Paul, I guess I would like Liz Horn. Hello, Liz. She makes an interesting point in the chat, and I'd like to sort of unpack it a little bit, if we could.
Sure.
So she talks about the adventure activity standards, and could we actually get peak outdoor bodies together to perhaps use the adventure activity standards as a supporting document for insurers? You can correct me if I've not asked that question correctly, Liz. But
Great question, Liz, and please speak up if I'm going. But we've been involved with the authoring of the adventure activity standards in each of the states. We've had some input in most of them, or we've had clients who have had input in most of them. The outdoor activity standards have been part of our underwriting guidelines since day one. So that's because we're an industry-driven. I was brought into this company so that they had a link between the underwriter and reality. Most insurers probably aren't even aware that the adventure activity standards exist up until a claim occurs. And so, look, I definitely believe that that's a proactive space. But if you're going to go into that, you need to make sure that you engage the insurers in the process and in the standards. And I'll be very careful in saying this, but for example, with the initial adventure activity standards, a lot of them were written with self-interest at heart. They wrote the standards. The key areas that, for example, the risk management aspect of it, but the key areas that affect claims are things like the staff qualifications, then the staff experience. Note that they work in that order, and it doesn't matter whether it's right or not. That's the judgments are made that way. The ratios of those staff, and they're the things that really have a big impact of the qualifications, the competency, and the ratios of staff. Coupled that with the risk management guidelines. What risk assessments have been done, what inspections have taken place, etc. So engaging the insurer and making sure that you're doing things of a standard that means something to them actually is really significant, because that hasn't been done typically in the past.
So Pete, if I can come in here, I think that there's it's Liz here. There's two things that come up. You mentioned before the accreditation schemes that are available to the outdoors right now, and that the program component of that was a bit light on. Years ago, when the fitness industry was having trouble getting insurance, and it sounds to me like our industry is having a little bit of trouble getting insurance. Years ago, when that happened, there was a collaborative effort by the fitness industry and the insurers to say, well, what would, in the terminology you say, what would provide that essence, that comfort level for the insurers? And the new Australian Adventure Activity Standards are a good framework for that. And so I think there's a potential there for us to have a conversation about, if we've got this great new framework and we've got accreditation schemes, how do we actually either use the accreditation schemes that are there and make the program component much more rigorous to inform the insurers that, hey, this person's been through an external audit, and guess what? They actually do meet the adventure activity standards. How would that stand up for the insurers to say, okay, we can provide a bit more confidence there, because there's an external audit that's happened against those adventure activity standards?
You're spot on, Liz, and there's probably three categories of activities. There are those that should be audited by an external body with expertise, where there's specific requirements that take place. There's another body of activities that probably can be audited by anyone with good risk management or industry knowledge, and then there's those activities that could even be audited by the site themselves. And if the system is robust enough, then that would be easy. And the three examples I use would be horse riding at one end of the scale, archery sort of somewhere in the middle, and a game at the site end of it. Because insurers now have taken on the fact that they need to find someone who is there, and so they're looking for external bodies, preferably national bodies, that can provide them with some substance across the board in that case. And that's being done from the insurers that know what they're doing anyway. And unfortunately, I can only talk on behalf of ours, but that's the distance and the that they've taken, which has provided a significant amount of security for our clients, but it's also provided a lot of angst for anybody who wants to come on board, because they're saying, well, how come we've never had to do this before? Now, with that, I'm going to say that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that would have had a significant impact. The issue we've got now is that the law and the legal profession are now coming from a totally different end. And given that this is being recorded, I've got to be very careful what I say. But unfortunately, our society is very litigious. Don't say for a minute that we're following the US. We're way worse than the US. And so the outdoor adventure and outdoor education space is actually a very volatile space. The activities are very volatile. You can be the right operator and do everything right. Something goes wrong. If it goes wrong, it can go catastrophically wrong. So insurers are very, very aware of that, because they've now got this string of claims that have been coming through over a long period of time that demonstrate that the cost of those claims is also of great significance. And I've got some interesting statistics, which unfortunately it's a bit difficult for me to produce them from now, but I will seek the permission from the insurer to perhaps put together a bit of a paper for the industry, because I think that sort of information is really, really worth knowing. You're asking insurers to come in for a relatively small investment on your behalf for a massive investment on their behalf. And there are other ways they can make money. So yes, you're on the right track, but things have caught up with us a little.
Thanks, Paul. Let's have a comment from David Chitty.
One of the things that, having been involved in standards and stuff for a long while, I think we've had too much of our standards and the like, where we've made things voluntary. I think now's the time to look at what we need to, say must-dos, should-dos and could-dos, and have them as compliance rather than something, you can do if you want to. Perhaps we need to rewrite the info at the start of the adventure activity standards, which sort of have much too much about voluntary things. I think that land managers, possibly the broader community, and certainly our insurers are going to really want us to show that we're doing stuff, not that we know we should and it's there, but we maybe or maybe not.
Maybe I could answer that. Just as I'm also the president of the Outdoor Council, and we're the holders of the adventure activity standards. It was a very deliberate decision right from the start to say that the Australian Adventure Activity Standards are a voluntary set of standards and guidelines. That said, up to every land manager can make compliance with that a condition of any permit that they give any operator. There's never been anything that stops anyone from doing that. And at the same time, I would say it's just as open for an insurer to say, look, we're willing to insure you perhaps at a lower rate or whatever if you comply with those standards, because we have confidence in it as the industry standard. But I don't think it's actually, I don't think the OCA is in a position to say these are mandatory. If you want to operate in this industry, you have to comply with every single word in the Australian Adventure Activity Standards. I think that's a step too far, but I think there's not really a problem with any land managers or even insurers making that statement. I don't know if anyone disagrees, but that's my take on it.
I think what Dom says is, whilst I agree with Dave to a degree, Dom, I think what you've said is actually quite correct, because I think in order to make it mandatory, I'm not sure where it would be made mandatory and who would make it mandatory, because it would have to be done on a state level, even though we live in a national environment. Every state is different. The other thing that I pick up on that is that you're 100% correct. But in the voluntary component of it has been engaging, and it's been able to get people engaged in it, and insurers have had the choice all along. I know, because we've represented it to all of the insurers. We've only had one that's going to listen. And interesting, their whole idea, people say to us, and I'm really glad you mentioned it, if we follow these standards, we should get a discount. It's getting to the point from our insurer, their view is if you don't want to follow the standards and not willing to comply with the standards, we're not prepared to provide you with cover, because on the basis that why should we charge more? Because even if we charge more, let's say we double a premium, let's say it goes from 10,000 to 20,000 or 50,000 to 100,000. In a multi-million-dollar claim, that makes zero difference. And the cost of defending claims now is significantly greater. On the positive side of it, though, one thing that has occurred in all of the major claims that we've been involved in, or any that we've been asked, and I'm often asked to work as an expert witness in these claims, in every case, the judges have taken into account the industry standards, and the adventure activity standards are typically the first that they encounter. So unless there's a national standard in a particular activity, then the AAS are always drawn into a claims environment.
Thanks very much, Paul. That was quite informative. I'd just like to welcome Pete Griffiths within the Australian Camping Association, and perhaps, Pete, you can enlighten us a bit from the ACA perspective on some of the work you've been doing in this area, and just to introduce a few things. I did promise you some time, so welcome to the Outhaus.
Thanks, Pete. Hey, I was talking to Dave Maskell earlier today, and I was shocked and horrified to learn that not everyone knew who the Australian Camps Association was. So I see there's quite a few of our members attending today, but for those who don't know, we're here to represent the business of camps around the country. We have members all around the country, and our work really involves around helping groups of all kinds and from all backgrounds, not just schools, but every background you could mention, get access to information about camps, but also how to find a good camp. And the back end of that is to help our members with resources and PD to help them provide the best experience and be best prepared to deal with those groups. And I'm going to not rabbit on, because I don't want to even start any sentence with a word containing the word C-O, not C anything else. Just to say that the work we're doing at the moment is also focused on trying to promote camps and outdoor activities as being the right thing to do in an environment which might be a little bit stressed at the moment. And part of our service for the public is to give them an opportunity to hop on our website, click a button and make an inquiry to see what camp or activity provider might be able to help them with their particular group. And I just want to share with this group that those inquiries did take a dive a few months ago for obvious reasons, but they're climbing strongly back. And for me, that's encouraging, because it shows me that people are really keen to get back out in the outdoors and are really keen to re-engage with themselves and with their friends and relatives and the rest of their group. So at the moment, I'm just looking at our data now. We've had about 400 inquiries so far this year, and I can see that on the up, as I say. I think it's important to remember we're not talking just about schools. We're talking about disability groups, seniors groups, faith-based groups, family groups, sporting clubs, associations, and so forth. And I think sometimes we do get caught in the school camp kind of mindset, perhaps to our detriment. So that's all I really want to say. It's nice to be able to see so many faces and names that I know. And I think the good work that we do in the outdoors shouldn't be forgotten. It is easy to get caught up in the issues in front of us around insurance and that other word I'm not going to mention. So keep the faith, keep the energy going, because I think as the days grow longer, so the opportunities to get people outdoors also increase.
Thanks, Pete. That was very informative and great to have you in the Outhaus. Got another question, believe it or not, for you, Paul. This one from Sharib Mullen. As a freelancer, I was wondering what kind of information should I be looking for to make sure I'm covered either by my casual employer or holding my own ABN? Can you comment on that, please, Paul?
Sure. Look, this is actually an area that a lot of people don't pay a lot of attention to. The amount of times I hear the comment, it's okay, I'm covered by their insurance. If you're running a business, you should have your own policies in place to protect your interests. As a contractor, you know, this is for operators alike. Most, if not all, public liability policies have an exclusion, for example, either that or an excess for injury to their contractors. So, for example, if this young lady's working for a company, she gets injured, and it ends up an action's taken against the company because they, in the absence of work cover, under law, the public liability policy does have to pick it up. So this is just one more area where it is. And most policies, for example, public liability policies, have an excess of around $25,000 to $50,000 on that. And for a small business, that can be prohibitive. So it works both ways. So if you're an employer or you're contracting for tax reasons, then you should make sure that all your contractors have their own insurance, because that is certainly, if you're working and running your own ABN, you should have a policy of your own to ensure your protection. And I will just add, because I really want to reiterate that because certainly having worked with the ACA over many, many years, I think it's a really, really good point to remember that whilst we've got all these problems and issues that are occurring, this whole situation of COVID, the insurance issues and everything else, just highlights how important our industry is and what it contributes to the general well-being of the Australian public overall and communities right across Australia. The numbers of people you see out walking and hiking and exercising during COVID is significantly greater than what's there. And yet the number of people now wanting to go out on organised activities and everything, this is a real opportunity for people, because I know firsthand the number of incidents and injuries that have occurred by people taking on an activity without a trained guide, without professional help. And so, it is really important that we recognise the skill sets that we help people engage in our outdoors with. And I think it's vital to our economy that we keep it going, because for the mental health even of just general Australia, I think we play a significant role.
Thanks again, Paul. I'd just like to personally just thank all the state reps, Dom from Queensland, Jamie from WA, Laurie from New South Wales and the ACT, and Andrew from Victoria for a very informative session. And you too, Paul. I think I personally have learned a lot about insurance and how it fits into our world. And I don't mean to be negative, but I think in a world where we are perhaps mid-pandemic, notice how I altered my language there, we need to be aware of how this is going to affect us as individual instructors, teachers, contractors, and also as program managers and potentially business owners. So I thought the presentation was very informative. With less than 10 minutes to go, I just wanted to segue and give a bit of a plug for the video of the week. I'm just putting the link in the chat now, and in my opinion, this four-minute video is absolute gold. It's very uplifting and provides a very positive message. It was recorded by a New Zealand comedian some time ago. It involves small children, which everyone always loves, and I almost cried. I'll be honest with the group. Thanks very much for participating in the Outhaus, and someone else in the management team is going to put the quote of the week up, and I've said too much. If there are any other questions in the last 5 minutes, otherwise we'll just close out.
The quote of the week this week, and I think it is very relevant to insurance, and if you have to change your insurers, is if you can't see a way forward from where you are standing, then find somewhere else to stand.
Stunning.
Mercy.
I thought that you hadn't heard from me, but there's been a few requests for your email, Paul. So could you maybe either whack that in the group chat, or later afterwards we could perhaps send it to people, but it'd be easier if you could put it in the group chat and then people could copy it. Thank you.
Pete, if I could just say something, just it's sort of building on what Paul said earlier about the importance of the work that everyone does across the outdoors and the scariness of some of the expeditions some people go on without a guide. That was one of the points Corf made to government quite early on, when there was no restriction other than on numbers on people going outdoors, but none of our expert guides could actually take them outdoors. So I made a point even about having, guided walks on some of the mountains, and said, but every group that's up there is significantly safer if there's one commercial operator up there who has all the right processes in place. And there was a whole lot of penny dropping going on out there going, oh yeah, okay. So it was really interesting right back when we were first in the lockdown, that the importance of trained professional guides in the outdoors was forgotten at that level. It was like, no, we'll shut it down, but we'll still let the public keep doing what they like to do. And that was a real concern right back what seems a long time ago, which was probably March, April. And that actually did cut through a bit once that was pointed out to some of the powers that be, I think.
Yeah, I'll just add a few things on to what Dom has said. I've had the luck of spending the last 5 days of last week out with a group of University of Sunshine Coast outdoor and environmental studies student on their third year expedition. And it was just quite inspiring, I think, to be working with people in the outdoors again, and in fact, practicing a whole lot of different protocols around that unmentioned C word. But it was really great to be in the outdoors with students and doing what we do best. And I think there is an amazing amount of power in this learning that we all definitely in this room have been aware of and have seen it touch people's lives. So I think that we're definitely in the right industry and on the right path.